what if we were born to work together in a beautiful tapestry to honor this exquisite place called the earth and find the jewels and feel free and full of ecstasy in the process? I mean, like, that is not a fantasy, that is a reality.
My dear Lakshmi, so happy to be in conversation with you. We've had our first conversation 2 years ago for Orilla Futuro, for Future Shore. This is our first interview ever in English, by the way, very thankful for that. And this is the beginning of our second season of Orilla Futuro, which is this project in which, together with my dear friend Mauricio Ishwara Gonzalez, we explore how to make sense of the present and what we need to learn in order to co-create better futures through weaving conversations with people that we admire, that we feel are explorers of this world in transition. So it's such a pleasure to be having another conversation with you, first one in English, as I said. How are you?
Oh, I'm very grateful. Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm really excited that this is the first conversation of Orilla Futuro in English. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very excited. All right, so you're a speaker, a facilitator, an author, a poet.
Yes.
You consider yourself a lover of the earth. You are also a mentor and a co-creator of several initiatives that you'll tell me about more in our conversation. And you've spent over 30 years as an apprentice and professor of Oriental philosophy and contemplative practices. So you've been exploring many things that we find very fascinating and very valuable in the times that we're living in. Mm-hmm. But beyond that description of what you do, I know that you're in transition now. You're in yet another time of transformation. I would love to hear from you. What is Lakshmi dedicated to? We don't like to ask, what do you do? We like to ask, what are your talents in service of? What are you dedicated to?
Yeah, so I'm dedicated to human evolution, and I'm dedicated to see the ways through initiatives, conversations, experiences, we can individually and collectively create and contribute to this great tapestry of the world and life together, essentially. I'm a mentor, I guide retreats, I create courses, and I write poetry. Yes.
I love it. And I know, and as I mentioned before, that you're going through a profound, deep transformation these last years or year.
Yeah.
I would like to hear more about that. What's that's being transformed deep in you, and how is that showing up in the world?
Yeah, so what comes to me right now is the concept of liminality, of really embracing the not knowing, of really understanding that this in itself has its charisma, has its place, and has an evolutionary facet that enables us to experience even more beauty and even more mystery in ourselves and in our existence. So right now, like in the last year or so, I've essentially been dissolving a lot of my masks, my organization, my life. I've become a nomad. And this has been very curious, sometimes terrifying, and sometimes I think I've had the most ecstasy and moments of ecstasy that I've ever experienced in my whole life. So it's like really sustaining this paradox of the beauty, but understanding that, wow, you know, like the earth beneath my feet is liquid, and feeling that liquid, like how does that affect my mind and my work, actually? And I think that really, I love the name of this project because it's really about going to those edges, Victor. Yeah.
I love it. And I love that you bring the word paradox, which is very much present in our conversations. And you said terrifying and ecstasy. Would you go deeper into what helps you when this transformation, this dissolving feels terrifying for you? Because I think that many of us can really relate to that, where so many of us are with deep longing to new identities, to explore more, being more genuine, and to be more in service of what we feel sacred in this moment, right? Yeah. So how do you deal with that, with being, with dissolving? Like, what helps you when you're terrified? Yeah. And how does it feel, or what gives you ecstasy?
Well, I think that it's about complexity and about diversity. One thing I understand is that every day I have to create some kind of ceremony. That ceremony can be dance, that ceremony can be a moment of contemplation with myself. I have to have every day, I have to have, and what gives me ecstasy is when I feel like I'm absolutely in the flow with existence, like whether it's with dance or with music or just sitting and observing, you know, a butterfly, or allowing the light to come through the trees. It's like, how can I experience the numinosity of life? So it's like when I embrace a numinous place, and that's fruit of, you know, many years, and I have to give like a lot of respect to the contemplative practices, many, many years of stillness, of listening, of surrender, of devotion. You know? So it's like through the heart, through the perception, these different kinds of wisdoms, and then finally study. Like I've been dedicating myself again to like a deepening into specifically the eco-depth psychology. Yeah.
This philosopher, Byung-Chul Han, talks about ritualizing our lives, right?
Yeah.
So that plays a key role for you. What rituals have we lost that we need to reconnect with?
Okay, so the most simple one that comes to my mind is, I'm going to eat something. I'm going to eat something, but wait a minute. Like, where did this food come from? What is this food? Like, how can I create relationship where I honor food? I mean, that's like the most simple thing. And so it's not about going back to like the traditional kind of prayer. It's about, let me feel and sense this being in the form of food that I have the privilege of putting in my body. What if I just take a few seconds, honor the food in the way that I want, honor the people who brought this to me, honor the fact that I have the possibility of having food. And when I go to that place, it's like, wow, it's all about humility. It's about the humus. It's about the place where everything comes from. The earth being synonymous with like cosmos, earth as like representation of, as you mentioned, sacred.
You talk about feeling, and you mentioned the word paradox again. That has so much to do with this project, right? With the paradox of being connected with our love for the world and with our pain for the world, right? For the current state of the world and for life, right? And I'd like to know how that translates into your work and how that fits into your work. Yeah. And if you could share a bit more of what you're doing, these retreats and these experiences that you're guiding.
Yeah, thank you. Well, to me, it's like, I feel like there are two faces of the same being. You know, it's like, I feel like if you want to love, you have to go to the pain, to the grief. If there's a spectrum of the way that we exist, the deeper we go, the higher or the wider we can experience existence. So it's like, by going to my own grief, by going to my individual conception, my own core wounds, making them sacred wounds, or working with them in an alchemy through all different kinds of systems, then I'm able to connect also with the pain of the world. It's like, the more sensitive I am, the more I sense myself, I can sense the other and the complexity of beings in the wild world. So I truly believe that by nurturing my relationship and recognizing what's going on in the world, really sitting, Victor, really sitting and like contemplating as I'm there with the river about water. And as I said in other interviews we've done together, it's like, I think about the animals. Like, one thing is we have a tap, the privileged ones in the world, and we can open it and drink water. What about the animals where they go to a place where there's no more water for them? Their children. It's like, so for me it's this complexity of holding like the essence of what is life. Creation, destruction, you know, life is birth and death. It's really truly, to be able to love, I have to be able to experience and want to experience the grief, to be more authentic with myself and my life and what emerges from me.
And how do you help people go through those experiences or connect with that?
Yeah.
How is that translating to your work?
So people come to me and we do individual sessions in presence or digitally. And then I take people on journeys. And these journeys are different in the sense that some of them are about connecting with the wildness of ourselves. Like, who am I in the opposite end of the domestication of myself? Who am I when I go back to the innately instinctive earth to become animal again? Like, that's an intelligence that I think we're beginning, as David Abraham talks about becoming animal, like we're beginning to understand the importance of who am I emotionally when I follow my instincts, and contextualize that with processes of deepening into philosophical understanding about ourselves, depth psychological understanding of ourselves. A lot of my work is also related to archetypal psychology, which means understanding the archetypes that inhabit our inner ecosystems, consciously and unconsciously. And how can I work with them with the love that I need to create for myself? So a lot of the ways are training others and holding space so that others can emerge in relationship to their own poetry, their own song. And also working with the healing processes so that we can really become more whole. And finally becoming whole as a basis for the creations and the offerings I make in my life.
How is this work important for each of us to do this work in relationship or in context of a meta crisis? What's the connection between doing this work and the state of our earth, our world, and the current state of humanity?
Well, as is inside, as is outside. It's like the relationship I have with myself and the capacity I have to touch something that's real and true and authentic and alive. It's like what I find really interesting about the path of human development, and specifically in the contemplative world, which is sort of, we can put philosophical approximation of the being, ontological understanding of who we are, epistemological understanding of reality, is like, what if I feel more alive when I'm more authentically in a wholeness that's mature? What if I can create relationship with my grief and I can still celebrate life? What if I am fulfilled? If I'm fulfilled, I'm not going to look so much about sustaining my egoic desires. I mean, pleasure, and I think that pleasure is like super important. But if I'm not able to put it in its place and also find out why was I born? If we don't really know why we're born, we don't really know why we're here. If we don't really know why we're here, we're not going to find perhaps the meaning we could find by going through these existential and, for me, fundamental questions. It's like, what if we were born to work together in a beautiful tapestry to honor this exquisite place called the earth and find the jewels and feel free and full of ecstasy in the process? I mean, like, that is not a fantasy, that is a reality. But to do that, we have to prepare and find out, each one of us, which way we want to go towards that reality and make it real.
What is the eco-depth psychology? What is it about and why is it so important?
Yeah. So this is a phrase, like, Eco-psychology is more predominant now, which is like this extraordinary field of psychology, and how through our ecological relationship with Earth and the world, we can learn and heal and become inspired and really connect with our inner vision. The vision that actually comes, like Thomas Berry would talk about, the dream of the earth, that there's a dream of the earth and we are being dreamed. And that these dreams want to come through us in the form of, let's say, dream in the sense of a project, Orilla Futuro, like Future Shore, so that the future ancestors can look back and see, and or the present ancestors can look towards the future and understand the implications of the meta-crisis. Eco-depth psychology takes into consideration depth psychology, which essentially is the understanding of the psyche through archetypical psychological lenses. So it means that I find out who I am in my conscious and unconscious being. I create a living, vibrant ecosystem. And then, but I interact with life and I allow life in deep listening to inform me. I open myself to life so that the earth and the cosmos and our intelligence that inhabits the existential nature of life can tell me and rise through me, so that intuitively, perhaps, I make existential decisions and I am in the flow of the waters of life. Like there is, as the Taoists knew, the Tao, which essentially is like flowing with what the waters of life decide and help me in conjunction with a personal individual alchemy. And here we get into the existential question of free will and all will, want to emerge through me at this time. Yeah.
You talked about the importance of knowing or connecting with why we were born, and with a sense of our gift to the world, right? What it could be, what our unique gift to the great community of life can be. Yeah. And you talked about intuition, you talked about dreams, you talked about wisdom. Where are these places or these practices that I really feel that the world, that then one of our challenges now is to integrate, to broaden our visions, right?
Yeah.
To listen to other ways, to connect with other ways. And I know that you connect with dreams, for instance, and with the wild. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Of course. Thank you. Yes, so many things you mentioned. I just wanted to say I had this image of like this arrow. And so I think it's about, I'm going to use the word again without any shame, like paradox. So what if it's about holding knowing and unknowing together? What if there's a world where through my dreams at night, I receive love letters from the universe, and these love letters tell me about how to heal myself, what to do in life, with whom I should connect with, what actions should I take, where will I be in the future? What if it gives me so much of an understanding of my existential reality that I can become impregnated and therefore feel completely taken care of, belonging to. This is one of our great existential anxieties, and this is what all the studies say to us. It's like this sense that the isolation that we collectively, on some scales, experience. That what if I feel and know that I'm absolutely in my place? What if there is such a thing as being in one's place, and that place means that I'm connected, deeply connected with life, with existence, and consequently my song, and that only means like what wants to emerge through me in my own specific way and in everybody's own unique way. What if I have an idea because I'm listening to the whispers from the depths?
How do you access the whispers of the depths? You talked about sweet darkness, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about the underworld.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Well, we have to be very respectful of the underworld, Victor. Yes, the underworld is what we've heard of through the myths throughout all of history. Going down, it's all about the descent. So we have like most of the belief system, religion talk about the ascent to the spirit. And then we have the descent, which simply means that we're going to the unconscious. Let's put it in psychological terminology. We're going to the unconscious, and there are riches. But to go there, we have to be very courageous and loving with ourselves. We have to have a very pure heart. We have to have purity of intention. The darkness is not what we imagine like in horror movies or what we project over the darkness. For me, darkness is the sweet night, looking under the stars, lying down in the grass, feeling embraced by the beauty of the caress of the darkness. That's the darkness. And as we go down into our unconscious, what we find there is we find like a plethora of grief, of pain, of monsters. Because of our traumas, and this is a natural psychological process. We repress and we lock the door to the dungeon and we throw the key away because it's just really too painful. So that's one facet. On the other side, Jung talked to us about the golden shadows. And in the shadow also there's jewels, there's gold, there's creative force, there's inspiration, there's songs that want to be sung through us, creations. Like we are I don't know, you tell me what you think, but as human beings, we are these extraordinary creative beings. And so like to be able to go down and navigate, take the arrow, oh, I have courage, I'm going to go to a part of myself that needs to be healed. And with love and with accompaniment, or by myself if I'm able to, I can go there. Oh, in the depths of the darkness is something that's whispering to me, it's telling me this book that you know that you should be writing, or this action you should be, or this person that you feel you need to bring more into your life because somehow you feel expanded like a bird flying in the air, like, expansive. So David White talks about the largest conversation we should be having with the earth, and that those people around us should be those people that help us to feel expansive, to help us create, to be this original song that we were born to be.
All this resonates deeply with me, and I've shared this with you. There's something in me calling me to dive deep into my darkness, but it feels really scary.
Yeah. And
you mentioned it. You need to have courage in order to dive into the depths.
Yeah.
Where have you learned that we can find the courage to dive into our sweet darkness?
Well, first of all, I do want to make evident that I've always been courting my darkness, but going deeply into it was really in the last year when I started to train with Animas Valley Institute, Bill Plotkin's, the founder of this institute. And there, it was going to the land, Victor. It's like, I'm going to go to the land. I'm going to the earth, a wild place. I'm going to fast for 4 days. I'm going to be there by myself. And what is the land telling me? So it's just so beautiful. It's like, as I'm sitting there feeling lost and holding myself and being lost and the unknowing, feeling just like looking at the clouds and just being in a romance. So there are all kinds of technologies, psychological technologies, and using the 4 windows of knowing, which they talk about in Animas, which is the knowing of cognition, the knowing of presence, the knowing of sensing, and the knowing of the imagination. And it's like, it's a study. So it's about finding out how can we, I'm afraid, and I was very afraid. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was very, very afraid, and I just opened myself, surrendered myself, felt the earth, felt the energy of the earth, and it's like the peace. So it's all about developing these windows of knowing and developing our relationship with existence in the way that each one of us feels will be like a tangible and comprehensive way to develop ourselves, that each one of us has to find the way.
Mm-hmm. What is mythopoetic identity?
It is, it's like the sheath around us that we were born with, each one of us. And the mythopoetic identity is this, we can receive and we hear through dreams from the earth, through ceremony, special like clues. And this gives us like our place of knowing. So mine has to do with the owl, has to do with a dream I received and a name I heard from the earth. So it's very mystical. You have to have a very innocent heart to open up to the concept of the mythopoetic identity as a vehicle to be able to see the owl as a huntress. She loves to live in the dark. She loves to be still. She comes and you don't know because she flies and it's very completely silent. At the same time, it's the one who really hunts to be able to give birth to new life. It's about death and life together. It's about not being afraid to have radical transformation. So mythopoetic identity is unique to each one of us. And it's about falling in love with the possibility of finding out what is it that existence wants to whisper to me? What is this unique place that I need to go to so that I can create something and give back to the world? Like having that connection with that identity as a means and a ways of a creative action.
I love that you talk about radical transformation. You mentioned that it was a love letter in a dream that showed you the owl. Yeah. I know that Bill Plotkin, that you referred to, experienced a butterfly whispering to him, cocoon weaver, as his Ekunish, that he says, he talks about it, his unique gift for the great community of life, and you as an owl.
Yeah.
What does it feel like for you when you witness a profound or radical transformation for the people that you work with, that you walk with these processes? When you create the retreats, when you work one-on-one with someone, how does that feel?
I think it's one of the most sublime feelings ever. It's like, it's such a privilege to be able to accompany someone. It's such a privilege that someone opens up their heart and their psyche to me as a part of an individual or in a group. So I work with many different groups in my women's community and creating different retreats. So it's like, it's such a beautiful privilege. It's like, I love it. It's like if someone is able then just to take the food in the form of what I've been expressing, or just the techniques or the technologies, and they take it and they begin to fly, and then they begin to create. Like, that's the idea that we all, it's like strength or power with. It's very horizontal. And that's really fundamental, because it's very delicate being in the position, being able to guide or accompany someone. So it's like really being able to find out, oh, this person is in itself. So when they begin to appear, when they begin to fly, or when they begin to create their roots in their unique way, it's like, it's so beautiful.
I love that. That's so powerful. So I like to ask, with such conscious of the state of the world, in this meta crisis, I like to know, how would you describe, and at the same time with such connection with the profound beauty of the miracle of being alive, right? At this time, how would you describe this moment in history, in humanity's experience on this earth, to someone from the future? Like if you were to send a message to the future, to someone, I don't know, 50, 100 years from now, from the future, how would you describe the experience of being alive in this planet right now?
Well, the first thing I would say is the essence of the experience of life is the very same thing. Like, deep time is a reality for me. So time is not linear, it's circular. It's like, and then I would say that this time, when we look at it from we look at what we're denominating metacrisis, what we're denominating the death of ecosystems, what we're denominating and classifying as this time where we recognize that the old structures are just completely redundant. And yet, we're in this place where the new systems are so far away. It's like the first thing I want to say is like, I'm so deeply sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. It's like, why? And I include myself, and that's really important. I can't say that they're not doing it. It's like so many incoherencies about the way that I would love to live a life that's even more related to taking care of the earth, taking care of life itself. Like, first of all, like, I'm sorry because I don't think we're all asleep. It's like everything that I've tried to do, when I look about it in the grand schema of things, it's just like such a little drops of water in this vast ocean. It's like, so that first, like we tried to do something. And then the second thing I'm going to say is like, listen, please listen with the deepest existential ways that you can to the magic and the mystery, because what I imagine will happen is that the earth will be different. And so perhaps the abundance that we have now of food, of transportation, of all the things that we take for granted now, we don't know whether it'll be present. So I'm thinking about the future children, the future animal children of the future. It's like, come together, create community. That's what I would say. Yeah.
And the last question has to do with that future.
Yeah.
What I really like, and you mentioned it as one of these 4 elements of I believe it's the map of the wine mind, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Imagination is one of them.
Yes.
And connect with our imagination. I also love, for instance, Rob Hopkins' work on the power of imagination.
Yeah.
What comes to, I would say to mind, but like to your being, when you connect with desirable futures, with the future of this world or worlds, what images of desirable, beautiful futures could you share with us?
Oh God, that's such an amazing question. Yes, it's like, I think just expanding on the concept of community, like transversal communities, rich communities, oasis. And saying this, though, I truly believe it has to do with the fact that we also, in our isolated places, in our places in the world, seeing and creating the possibility of connection with all different movements. I truly believe we have to drink from each other, from my place, from your place, from all of our places, and find a way to make connection, number one. And then secondly, it's like, what if we all started to dream together? Like, what if we could all start imagining together, creating spaces so that we can go to the society and see where we can serve together and find out what it is how to be turned on in this process. That's super important. It's not all about el mandato it's not all about like the mandate of what it is that I'm going to be creating for the world. It's also about like, how can we play together? Like, how can we find the area that's extraordinarily liberating too? It's like life, breath, body, eros, ecstasy, wisdom. It's like these are all extraordinary gifts. It's like, if we don't get together, if we don't formulate some kind of cohesive units, communities, it's like that's where we have to be. It has to be about the union. And so this is like the first things coming to me, and I just have really lots of questions. I feel like I'm just beginning to touch possible futures, yeah.
That was the last question, but you you realized that you switched to Spanish because due to your years of work and living in Latin America.
Yes.
So this is now my last question.
Okay.
Which is, I love how you're working like globally and locally and in the English-speaking world and in the Spanish-speaking world. And I wonder, this is a question that I always like to ask. What have you found, or what do you see that's different, unique, or a gift from Latin America to the world?
Yes, thank you so much for these questions. I'm really passionate about this. It's like having lived for almost 20 years of my life in South America, 10 in Colombia and 8 years in Argentina, and here recording this in Argentina, in Cordoba, it's like, I truly believe that we have to get away from Eurocentric concentration. I feel like, unique places in the world and so much beauty and worth and wisdom that's emerging. And what I find here about Argentina especially, my heart is really here. It's like, I feel like there's this extraordinary charisma, and working with people like yourself and in various projects and the communities here, it's like, the transmission or the presence of the way of being that inhabits you all here, it's just like, there is a way of being that I find so fundamental that has to do with the capacity to feel, the capacity to express love, the capacity to play. That on one side is what I consider to be qualities of the human nature of wholeness. And then this exquisite kind of like innovation that's going on here in Argentina, the innovative, creative force about the way that you're all thinking, from what you yourself have created about new economies. And like, I feel like the world needs to recognize that it's not about what we understood of the centers of influence. It's about opening up and recognizing this is a time of like celebration of intelligences that are innovative and are taking us to new places collectively. So I think it's like time to listen to what's going on here in Cordoba and in Argentina. It's time to listen and drink from, and I really feel that here. It's like I drink from the beauty of just, and I just feel like a child in like this in this extraordinary playground. It's like, there's so much beauty here and so much charisma here that has to do with a specific kind of unique wisdom that's being born because of the Argentinian history, because of South American history too. It's like so much to learn from the collective identity, the wounds of the past, the current challenges of what are going on, and how that keeps us, and I think this is a good place to end, it keeps us on the wild edges. And I believe that through the wild edges and taking ourselves to the wild edges, we can bring something beautifully unique to the world.
Thank you for that. Thank you for this conversation. I truly believe that Latin America has such a great gift for the world. It's access to ancestral wisdom, to remaining biodiversity, to communities, to entrepreneurs. There's so much richness and such a great gift for the world. I'm passionate, as you mentioned, in sharing that with the world. We do this through Orilla Futuro. I do it through PINE, the Platform Introduction to New Economics, and we're together with Melissa, with my partner in that project. We're going to Europe to share what we are learning here in Latin America. So I love that last question emerged, because I'm really passionate about that, about sharing how Latin America can be a hub for regeneration for the world. So that's a great place to end it. I'm super happy that we've co-lived here for almost 2 weeks here in my beloved Cordoba, Argentina, that you're here in my house, in our house. Yes. I've seen you daily connecting with your wildness, with your rituals, with how you are so much alive. And I really admire that. Thanks for this conversation, and we'll have many more conversations in the future, and hopefully co-facilitate more workshops like we did the other day. So really happy to be sharing all these experiences with you. Thank you, Lakshmi.
Oh, thank you so much, Victor. I'm so grateful, and I feel like let's see how we can bring, this extraordinary, unique charisma here from this part of the world to the rest of the world. I think it's just, let's see how we can sow these seeds and continue to create. So thank you so much for having me here in Orilla Futuro, in the Future Shore.
Thank you.